Welcome and thank you for your interest in Cordova. Cordova is an app that significantly reduces the time you spend on your DevOps chores for Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get started with Cordova. I won't dive deeply into all the features of the software. I'll just show you how to set it up and configure it. To get started, we're going to download the latest Cordova installer from the website. For that, we log on to atlantic-oak.com. We go to the Downloads page and click on the zip icon. Cordova is packaged as a zip file. The zip file contains the MSI installer and the administration and user's guide in PDF format. Once it is finished downloading, we must right-click on the zip file, select Properties, and check the Unblock checkbox, and click on the Apply button. We extract the contents of the zip file onto a folder in our Windows box. We double-click on the MSI installer. We recommend installing Cordova in a one-box VM. That's what we're doing here. It's best because we don't have to install SQL Server, Visual Studio, or other prerequisites. But we can install Cordova on any Windows system. Cordova uses your Microsoft Work account to authenticate, so before you start Cordova, you have to go to AppSource in Microsoft.com and enroll in a Cordova subscription. Every Cordova subscription comes with a 1-month free trial, and you can cancel anytime. In AppSource, you have the option of paying month to month or at a discount if you prepay the entire year. You can also specify the number of users if you want several members of your team to have access to Cordova. Once you are ready, click on the Place Order button. After AppSource carries out a verification process, you will be presented with a Configure SaaS button. Click on it. You will be taken to our website to complete and confirm the enrollment process. Once you are in our website, click on the Activate Subscription button on the bottom of the page. Now you are ready to begin assigning licenses to your users so that they can access Cordova. This must be done on your Microsoft 365 Admin Center. The confirmation screen will have a hyperlink that points directly to the Billing Licenses page. Click on it. Click on the Assign Licenses button and select the user that you want to access Cordova. This user will now have access to Cordova and to our technical support. When you start Cordova for the first time, the application will prompt you for your work account. Once you have completed the sign-in process, you will be able to use Cordova. In the background, while I was starting Cordova, the software created a database in SQL Server called AO Cordova. The system uses this DB to store important information that would otherwise have to be queried off Azure DevOps. Our first configuration task is to go into Settings, General Settings. The first tab will contain information to connect to the SQL Server database. The system configures this information by default. This does not have to be changed unless needed. For the second tab, first we need the organization's URL from Azure DevOps. For that, we navigate to the Source Control Explorer in Visual Studio. If the VM is mapped, this URL will be at the root of the projects. In this case, it's dev.azure.com Atlantic Oak. You must precede this URL with HTTPS and a colon, 2 slashes, and then you're good to go. For the personal access token field, you have to go into Azure DevOps, go to User Settings at the top right, and click on Personal Access Token. Then click on Create New Token. This new token should have full access, and for convenience, we take the maximum duration we can take, which is a year. You must keep in mind that the token will have to be renewed once it expires. I generally set up an appointment in Teams 3 days before the expiration, so I won't forget. The personal access token will only be visible once when you click on the Create button. So, you might want to copy it somewhere, especially if you're setting up more than one instance of Cordova. Again, please don't hesitate to contact us if you're having problems. For the project, I'm going to pick the first one from the list. D365F&O/S1 is the TFVC sample project we created. For the workspace, I'm going to choose the one that has 4 mappings. The other one I'm sure is not being used. And with these 4 settings, we have finished setting up the general settings part of the setup. In the other 2 tabs, values are picked by default by the app. It is important that we run a full DB update at this time. It will bring information from Azure DevOps into the local database. It might take a while depending on the size of your D365 project. This next tab contains a series of folders that were created when Cordova started up. They will store conflicts, reports, scripts, and other files that we want to persist. They are currently empty, but we'll begin to house those files once we start promoting code and doing other operations. Finally, the Executables tab. Here Cordova has scanned your one-box VM and generated pointers to important executable files. These settings should not be changed unless necessary. Now, before we go into our next topic, which is branch setup, let's take a look at the project we've created in Azure DevOps. We have a repository called Dev. We have created a branch from Dev called Test, and we have created a branch from Test called Prod. This might or might not resemble your setup, but don't worry. Cordova can accommodate all kinds of branch setups. These branches have been mapped in Visual Studio to the following folders. Dev has 2 mappings like in most one-box environments, one for the metadata and the other for projects. Test and Prod are directly mapped to their own folders that we created. As you probably already know, only the metadata folder gets compiled. The projects folder only contains Visual Studio files. Now we go into Settings, Branches. The first branch we will call Dev and will point to our Dev branch in Azure DevOps. The local branch setting is optional, so I'll leave it blank. It is only used for generating scripts, and in that script generation, it is only used when we check change sets in, after a merge. Since we won't check in change sets via scripts for the Dev repository, we will leave it blank. Change sets for Dev will be checked in via Visual Studio. Now, even though the projects folder doesn't get compiled, in most projects it gets merged all the way to testing and production environments. So that's what we're going to do here. The second branch we will call Test and will point to our test branch in the DevOps repository. We will set the local branch to the directory we have created and have mapped test to in our one-box VM. It really doesn't hurt to merge the projects folder all the way to prod. If we were to only merge the metadata folders, then this branch setup would look more symmetrical, with Dev being mapped to a local folder. The projects folder can contain D365 interrelated C# projects and other code, so in that case, it's not a bad idea to merge it and have the 3 versions: Dev, Test, and Prod. Finally, we will call the last one Prod, and we'll point it to the Prod branch. Again, we set the local branch value to the directory where this branch is mapped on our local VM. Some of you may be wondering, what if I had a repository called Prod, then I branched it out to Test, and from Test, I branched it over to Dev? Don't worry, Cordova can also accommodate this scenario. And we will see that in the next part of the setup when we configure forms and reports. Okay, so we've now completely specified the branches in Cordova. You can create additional branches in the future if the structure of your project changes. You cannot delete a branch if you have transactions against it, or if you have other references. Now we go to Settings, Form Configuration. Here we will be configuring the user interface, or as we call them, forms for the application. We have 2 types of forms. One that shows the history for the check-ins, and another one that shows the merge candidates. Merge candidates are simply change sets that exist in the source branch and do not exist in the destination branch. For the history type forms, you only have to specify the source branch. For the merge candidate forms, you have to specify a source branch and a destination branch. In this case, we're creating a dev to test and a test to prod merge candidate screen and 3 history forms, one for dev, one for test, and one for prod. This configuration screen could also have forms for prod to test or test to dev. It all depends on how you structure the source branch and destination branch. Since we don't normally merge from prod to test or test to dev, we won't put them in, but it can be done. Another thing is that we can do baseless merges. A baseless merge is a merge between two branches that don't have a parent-child branch relationship. All you have to do is mark the baseless checkbox. Once we're done, we will have the 5 basic forms that we need for this simple branching strategy. And now, having finished the form configuration, I'm going to demonstrate how to merge code in Cordova. First, I'm going to do a really simple change in an X++ class in a sample demo project. And having done the change, I'm going to check it in. I'm including the work item ID in the check-in. Although it is not necessary and certainly redundant, I'm duplicating the work item ID and description in the change set comments. This check-in is being done, as a developer would normally do, in Visual Studio. Now we jump over to Cordova to do the merging. We click on Forms and then on Dev2 Test Merge Candidates. The check-in was done on the Dev branch, and now we want to promote it over to Test. There is a single candidate to merge, which is the change set we just checked in. We click on the checkbox to select the Merge candidate, and then on the green button to start merging. Once it has been merged, the operation will be recorded in the merge log. Now we want to promote this newly merged change set into prod, so we open the test to prod form and do the same. Now let's check our test and prod history forms and look for our newly merged change set. I'll mark the checkbox. This is a quick overview of how fast you can merge and promote code when using Cordova. In Visual Studio, there is a lot of copying and pasting and certainly a lot of room for error. And now we go to Settings, Report Configuration. You can create several reports, and each report will contain any number of tabs. Creating tabs for reports is very similar to creating forms, so I won't go into deep detail here. Think of a report as an Excel spreadsheet that you can send to your D365 implementation team via email. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to run a report. Go to Reports and click on the report name we've just created. The system will create an Excel spreadsheet with several tabs and will show you a preview. You get a snapshot of the information that is contained in the forms. Since Excel is so widely used, you can send this report to non-technical stakeholders that need promotion information, as well as other technical personnel that do not have a Cordova license. The physical Excel file will be placed inside the Cordova working folder and will have a timestamp name. For the final part of this video, we will go over build configurations. When merging code, it is useful to have a mechanism to compile the code from the target branches and make sure that it is not broken in any way. Prior to Cordova, you would need 3 VMs to compile the code, 1 for each branch. With build configurations, you only need 1. In each build configuration, the only thing you have to do is give it a name, specify the branch, and then point it to the local path of the metadata folder that you want to compile. For Dev, it's the package's local directory. Now I'm going to go to the test build configuration and compile it. It only has one customized model and the code base is minimal. It will compile in milliseconds. Actual branches will have many more models and will take much longer. The system will only compile customized models and will determine the order in which they are compiled according to the references. If there is a compilation error, the system will let you know. And this concludes this video. Thank you for watching. If you need any assistance installing Cordova or you experience any problems, please get in touch. Our email is support@atlantic-oak.com.